Hello everyone, we are live. It's awesome to be back with another webinar. So welcome if this is your first time joining us here. Now as always, a little bit of housekeeping. We try and make these as interactive as possible. So please feel free to reach out to us on the chat section. If you have a specific question, you can ask it at any time. At the bottom of your page, there's an Ask a Question tab. That's the best place for us to see it because the chat can be a bit noisy. And we also have some polls in there that we'll go through. So please feel free to interact as much as you can. I'm just going to share my screen here. All right. So I'm super excited to be joined here by James Stansfield. Now, James is working a senior software developer for a company called Rewind. So welcome, James. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So a little bit about why we decided to kind of tackle this topic is that GitGuardian, we obviously work very closely in Git repositories. As the name suggests, and many of you will probably be familiar with, we're very focused on security. But part of building a well-operating organization is to make sure we have a lot of coverage in different areas, including in backups. And if you've watched some of the webinars or watched some of the videos, you may have heard me talk about secret sprawl or code sprawl. And one of the places that your code sprawls or secrets and unwanted information sprawls into is in your backups. So that's why GitGuardian works with Rewind, and we're trying to build a kind of a much more kind of interactive relationship as we go forward to make sure that these backups also don't increase your sprawled secrets. But there's a little bit of nuance. As I found out when going into this, preparing for this webinar, with actually backups and what's included in a backup. And as I've learned, no, a cloned repository is not actually a backup. So we're going to go through and we're going to cover all that. So just as we're waiting for everyone to come join, as always, we do have prizes to give away in this webinar. So if you want to get a care package, a GitGuardian care package, the way to do that is to interact. The most interactive people in the webinar each month will get a care package. We have some cool stuff. We've got Rubik's Cubes, hats, some cash cams, some cool stuff. So you'll certainly want to get some of that. And just as we're waiting for everyone to come join, why don't you let us know where you're tuning in from? So I myself, I'm tuning in from Paris in France. James, where are you coming at us from today?
I am coming from Canada's capital, Ottawa.
Ottawa. I've never been there. Never been to Canada.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful, especially right now. We got about 49 centimeters of snow dropped on us on Monday. Wow,
that's a lot of snow. I was in Tennessee. I was in Tennessee a couple of weeks ago, and we had 25 degrees 1 week, and then a week later we had negative 12. And this is Celsius. Sorry, not Fahrenheit. Then we had negative 12 and a whole bunch of snow, so it was crazy. All right, Dominican Republic. I see. I think that's the first. Serbia, California, Utah, London, Spain, Germany, Bangladesh, Sweden, India, a lot of companies covered.
Nice.
Huntsville, Alabama. Grenoble, France. Lagos, Nigeria. Welcome, everyone. It's great to see so many different companies here. I'm always amazed. This is like my favorite part of the show, to see where everyone's coming in from. One day I'm hoping to see someone from my home country, New Zealand, but I think it's a bit early there for that to be an option. Okay. Well, I think that it's time to really get stuck in. So let's start off with our first poll that we have. Down the bottom, you'll see a poll tab, and then I'm going to hand it over to James. So before we get into the topic, it'd be interesting to complete this now. Do you currently, in your organization or personally, back up your GitHub repositories and data? So a backup isn't just a local clone copy, but you can use the GitHub API. There are some open source tools that maybe do it, and there's also third-party vendors like Rewind. So fill in that poll, and we'll revisit that at the end. But right now, I'm going to quit sharing my screen, and I'm going to hand it over to you, James.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Let me cue this up.
Oh, we've lost James. We're just waiting for him to reconnect. Hopefully this will... There we are. We're back.
So this is a fun platform. I have to be on the right monitor to share the right screen at the right time. There we go. All right, can we see the slide?
I can see the screen. I'm seeing a lot of comments in the chat, which is something that I was kind of too saying that they never really knew that backing up meant something other than a local copy. So I think this is going to be interesting.
Good. Yeah. Okay. Hello once again. I'm James Stansfield. I'm a senior software developer for Rewind, and I'm actually the team lead for the Rewind for GitHub product within the company. Just a quick agenda. Today I'm going to speak to you a little bit about Rewind itself, why we feel backing up all your data is important, and I'm going to start by talking about, I'll start talking about GitHub as well, how it does and doesn't back up your data, why it's important to back up all of that data within GitHub, and a little bit about Rewind's low-effort solution for helping you with this important task. At the end of that, we actually have a short video to demonstrate the system in action, and then we'll get to some questions. So, since 2015, Rewind has been on a mission to help businesses protect their SaaS and cloud data. Today, over 100,000 customers in more than 100 countries use Rewind's top-reviewed apps and support to ensure their software-as-a-service applications, making sure they're running uninterrupted. The Rewind platform enables companies to back up, restore, and copy critical data that drives their business. As you see, we're currently serving about 7 different platforms, and there's actually a lot more coming. It's pretty exciting. Working at this company, there's a lot of development effort going on to make sure that we're meeting those goals of adding more platforms all the time.
So Rewind does a lot more than just GitHub itself. That's part of the package, but also a lot of other things as well.
Exactly. I've only been with Rewind for just under a year now, but I do believe we started off backing up e-commerce platforms like Shopify. And then we just naturally scaled out from there. We've been focusing a lot on development endeavor type platforms recently. So things like Trello, GitHub, and Jira is the last platform that we've been adding, and it's in the early access beta right now.
Cool, excellent.
All right. So why should you back up GitHub? It's a really good question, and I'm glad that there's a lot of people here who don't understand exactly what the difference between data on GitHub is versus what's in your repository. So first, we're gonna talk a little bit about SaaS models and how things are backed up. Unfortunately, there's a common misconception about what SaaS platforms provide when it comes to backups. Many of these platforms tend to rely on something called the shared responsibility model. For data security of everything that they're storing in the cloud. This model shows that the platform is responsible for the platform itself and the software infrastructure, but the user is responsible for protecting their own account level data. Account level data includes everything that is personalized to your business. That's in GitHub's case, that's repositories and the metadata that surrounds those repositories. These are things like pull requests, issues, project management, releases, milestones, etc. So most organizations aren't aware of this, and this is a pattern we see a lot, actually. So in the unlikely event that something extreme occurs with, say, GitHub on the whole, let's say a meteorite strikes the data center where they have all of their systems, or there was a data breach. GitHub, yes, would probably be able to restore all of the data for everyone who's currently using the platform, which is awesome. That is their business continuance. However, outside of an extreme event like that, where it's a total platform failure or a significant failure, if something happened to your data specifically, GitHub's platform-wide backup is not very useful to you, mainly because you don't have access to it. They don't have a way of easily determining exactly where your data is and only being able to restore your data. And you're subject to their retention policies. So they may only be storing data for maybe 10 days as a backup, wherein you might need something that's a little longer. So this may not align with your needs overall. So this is not a good thing. And most of us don't read all of the terms and conditions of software and platforms, but it's written right in there. There's a limitation of liability assigned to this, where they do not back up or are not responsible for backing up and restoring your specific data. So obviously, you can access all of this data, even the bits that are beyond the repository, and you can back it all up yourself. Yeah, you can build a tool. You can build a tool to manage it, or you can utilize a third-party platform to do it on your behalf, such as we want. So you're thinking though, maybe that clone is a complete backup. It's not. Repositories only back up your code base and the entire history of the code base. That's what Git is great for. But the GitHub platform, the reason you're using that application, it's a lot more than just a hosting platform for that repo. The related metadata that goes along with the repository is not in that local copy. There's no way of getting it in there. So you're missing out on backing up that complete GitHub experience. So the example here is, if all of your data was wiped from GitHub, you may be able to find the latest repository that has, or a copy of your repository that is up to date. You could restore that to GitHub, but you've lost everything else. All of the data that you may have had in wikis or in the issue tracker, or even just the commentary that you have from peer reviews in pull requests, that will not be there any longer.
So that's super interesting. So,
yep.
Source code we can back up in a local copy, and basically leave it everything else of why we're using GitHub, because we know that it's kind of a complete project management tool now, and a lot of organizations use that. That's not included in the clone. If you restored that, none of that is going to be there. The comments, the milestones, everything like that, gone.
Exactly. You'll have your commit comments, but that's about it. And there is also the chore of finding out who has the latest copy of that repository. So if you have a large development staff, then everybody's working on it all together. It's a lot easier to have everyone checking in their changes on a daily basis and having that backed up from that source.
Anyone that's done anything with rewriting Git history will know how much of a nightmare it is when everyone has different history. Forget it, start again.
Exactly. And then that's for one repo. How many organizations have more than one repo? How many have more than 100?
Yeah.
So a complete failure becomes a problem, right? So anyway, so here's a couple quotes from some of our customers. Both of these are really dealing with account compromises, but it could also be attributable to any user who has or gains access to, mess around with the data or even just making mistakes, right? I've worked for a few companies where the repositories, everybody has equal access to it, and effectively everybody is the owner of a repository. That's kind of dangerous in small businesses, but even the people who have experience and who have access appropriately can still make a mistake from time to time, and there's better to have a safety net underneath you to restore if something goes wrong with some of the major operations. Definitely
for sure. And so, we know from history that Uber has had account compromises in their GitHub instances. There's some other ones. I mean, we're not sure where the Twitch leak came from, essentially, but you could imagine that's one area where it could have. So we know that account compromises can happen. Is your Git almost like, does it fall under the kind of a target for ransomware attacks? Could someone do a ransomware attack on your GitHub account by kind of deleting that data, removing all that metadata and those kind of project milestones that we're talking about?
I think you're giving people ideas now. I think certainly GitHub is a destination. People know that it is probably the industry leader of hosted software repositories. So I would not be surprised if there's not consistent attacks on it with dictionaries, people trying to compromise accounts on an ongoing basis.
Mm-hmm.
And exactly your scenario is correct. If somebody got into an account, if it was an owner account, they could go in, make a copy of all of those repositories or not, and delete them all. And then leave you a nice README in an empty blank repository that says, "Pay me, here's my Bitcoin wallet." Right?
Hypothetically, not that we're giving any ideas away. Strictly educational.
Exactly. White hat only. So what can Rewind do for you when you need your GitHub data backed up? So we have a product for this called Rewind Backups for GitHub, of course. So what we do is we provide automated backups for hosted repositories and the associated metadata on GitHub's platform. So this ensures that you have business continuance for your development team in case of disasters, attacks, or mistakes. So some of the key benefits of Rewind, we're providing that managed solution that allows you to set and forget without writing any code to take care of this. All the daily backups are automated. Complete copy of the repository and metadata happens daily. Once it's enabled, you don't even have to think about it again unless you need it. To provide the same thing on your own, you would need to code a solution against GitHub's API, test it, and maintain that code. You'd also need to host and secure the location of those backups for whatever your retention period is. And then over time, you would have to make sure that that backup code is up to date with GitHub's feature set and to make sure everything is covered. So that's a project in itself. And, a lot of startups don't need a project that isn't related to the business because you're not making any money off of that, right? Mm. So as we've already said before, everybody knows that a Git repo is a copy of that entire code base with all the commits and the changes for the lifetime of that repository, which is awesome. But we've also said, that's not everything that you use GitHub for. GitHub tracks code reviews with commentary on pull requests. We have wiki pages for documentation, issue trackers, everything that is related to that repository. So we're talking that if you are using GitHub for more than just a place to store your repository as a backup or as a way of allowing your teams easy access to it, you're probably using the GitHub ecosystem somewhere. So over time, you stand to potentially lose access to a significant amount of information, right? That could be just the project tracking, releases, milestones, etc. And so, this is the sampling here of what we actually back up, right? There's a lot to lose out on. If your development team is invested, you want to make sure that is all backed up, right? I don't want to repeat myself too much, but if you came into this webinar thinking that cloning your repo is perfectly fine, it may be if you only care about the code repository itself and nothing else. But are you actually taking a snapshot of that repository every so often? Is the laptop you're downloading it onto being backed up itself as well, right? You have to take care that you are making multiple copies of these things. So, but the other side of any backup is the restoring of that backup. And getting that back onto the platform is not an easy task. Coding a solution to restore that data is very difficult work. And typically, it's not something that's fully tested. And it usually is fully tested only when it's needed. You may have written that project to back up, say, GitHub 6 months ago, but in the heat of the moment when you need to do a restore, you may find that the restore code is lacking. So you don't want to be in a position where you find out at the wrong time that you didn't solve for a particular data point. You're already at a point where you're needing a solution, and time may be critical in order to restore that, right? So using Rewind for GitHub to restore data is actually painless, mainly because we're doing all that heavy lifting for you. We've done an awful lot of work to get that done. So ultimately, it comes down to just a few clicks, and you're going to have a complete restoration of that data that we've saved from you from GitHub. And we go and retain daily snapshots of that data up to 365 days, so that you can actually go back and choose whichever restore point that you want with just a few clicks. We are also SOC 2 and GDPR compliant. So choosing a SOC 2 compliant vendor ensures the right controls are in place to protect your organization's data and to mitigate third-party risk. Restore tests are often required for disaster recovery or business continuity programs, either on a monthly or a quarterly basis. Rewind makes that relatively painless, and restores happen in a few minutes. We have data servers in the EU to comply with GDPR, as well as our US data center location. Enterprise plan customers of Rewind for Backups, Rewind for GitHub, are able to choose their data server location of their choice. And of course, Rewind satisfies that 3-2-1 rule for backup integrity. Best practices, meaning you want to have a minimum of 3 backups. You want to have that spread over 2 different types of media and at least 1 copy off-site so that you are well protected. A few other quick features of the platform. We also allow backups to be downloaded directly or synced to an Amazon S3 bucket so that you have easier access to that data without actually affecting a complete restore. This is good for customers who also want to maintain a local backup copy easily. And we allow for a running audit log of all interactions on Rewind, so we can actually see which users are affecting changes on the system. You are actually able to clone your repository directly from Rewind server in cases where GitHub is actually down and you need access to that. We have multiple user support based off of your GitHub ownership, and we can actually archive GitHub repositories and the resulting metadata for those repositories if you want to actually clean up the number of repos that you have on GitHub itself. So this is a quick overview of the product features. We have 2 different plans, Pro plans and Enterprise plans, and the feature set is split between them. This is to help satisfy the needs of small to medium and larger organizations. All these features, of course, are detailed on our website if you have any questions about those. And that is me running through all those slides.
All right. Now it's super interesting, and there's a few points that I want to kind of touch on here, and I guess kind of like, and also in the overall ideas of some of the points you touched on. So I mean, one of the interesting things that you mentioned is the shared responsibility model, and I'm curious about this myself because we deal with it too in secrets detection, because the argument is whose job is it to protect data on this, do you think that this, are you guys in favor of the shared responsibility model? Do you think it can be a bit of a cop out for companies, or is it just what in your opinion? This is a broad reaching question that is going to cause some conflict. So I'm starting with it, but what's your opinion about that? And join in the chat too if you what are your opinions of the shared responsibility model?
Yeah, so my personal opinion is backups are hard. Doing backups right is not simply just copying files and making sure that they're available. You have to think about what the business requirements are, what the needs are, the sensitivity of the data, making sure things are stored appropriately. And for individual companies to provide a service that is filling a gap, a niche, sometimes startups are written or are created to fill a need before somebody else gets there first. To be able to have to deal with protecting all that data as well, that's a major project in itself. And we're not even talking about the restore side. Restore is almost easily twice as hard as just making sure that you're doing backups appropriately.
Right.
it's kind of like it's a never-win situation. If I had a platform and I provided backups to the best of my ability, it's not necessarily what I've created is not necessarily going to align with what you would want to feel secure for your data, right? At which point you may approach me and I may be convinced and agree. So then I have to go back and change backups in order to satisfy you. But then another customer comes along and same thing, rinse, repeat over and over and over again. And eventually the backup endeavor is actually probably bigger than my core product, depending on the sensitivity of the data, et cetera. It is actually much easier to allow for third parties to manage that data for us, or for my platform, my fictitious platform, and then you can find the right mix of that technology for your needs.
Yeah, we had an interesting point from Fred in the chat. He said that it's the shared responsibility model is fair, but people don't realize that they're involved in it. I think that's a good point too. Yeah. It's like people are kind of unaware that there is a shared responsibility that they have as a user to make sure that their information is protected. And when that happens, if you do suffer attack, you can't go to GitHub or to AWS or one of the other major players and say, restore my data, please, because it's not feasible.
There is nothing worse than the feeling of when you lose data, whether it is because you're the person who discovered an attack or something that happened, or perhaps you even were the unlucky soul who made a mistake. And dependent on the size of the company or the enterprise, you may or may not have a plan to resolve this. And in the moment, there's only one thing that matters. It's restoring that data, right? But if you are the person, say, who actually made the mistake, you're thinking now about your livelihood. Am I going to survive this event, etc.? But you still need to perform and get things done. If you have a good backup strategy and an ability to simply go to the appropriate person who has access and make a few clicks on a screen and everything is restored, that's a lot better situation to be in.
Yeah.
But it happens. It probably happens more than you think. That little mistakes when people are either learning or even hardware failures can take out data for you, right?
Definitely. And how did you kind of get involved in Rewind? What's your history of a developer, and why was this an interesting topic that you decided to tackle?
Yeah, my personal journey as a developer has been working for the last 22 years in a variety of businesses, some large, mostly small, mostly startups actually. And I think that kind of fits the pattern of the type of development I like to do. I like to be challenged, and whenever I move from a company to another one, I always look at what the space is, where we're going, and I typically end up choosing a new space where it's either a vertical where I've never been in before, or it's a technology that I've not been around. So I've worked for startups that have serviced the music industry, the farming industry here in Canada, and everything under the sun, even in cybersecurity for a little while as well. Rewind was interesting, mainly because I had some peers from a previous company that were working there, and they kind of helped sell Rewind as a company. But the sheer scale of what Rewind is doing for the potential for the number of backups that we could be providing once we acquire the customers, the number of platforms out there. I mean, how many businesses exist in the SaaS space today? Hundreds and thousands, right? And not everyone is backing up their data with those. So we're looking to get there. So the scale of the operation, never been dealing with backups personally myself before in terms of software as a service, and quite rightly, it was actually a new programming language that I hadn't been working with before, aside from some projects. So we primarily operate on Ruby on Rails, or Ruby itself, some Rails projects. So.
Yeah, cool. I've never personally done any Ruby projects, but it's something it's on the New Year's resolution to try and get a couple in the GitHub repository this year. We'll see. We'll see how we go. Now, let's talk about scale. You've worked for lots of different organizations, large and small in different sectors. At what point do we need to really be worried about backing up everything? At what point do we need to kind of move from keeping a cloned copy in cold storage to maybe having a bash script? I think David said that he had a bash script to, that, and then needing this, full service. What's the process like that? Is it something that we all need to be worried about? Is there a certain threshold where you reach a point of scale that you need to be worried about this kind of backing up? Where do we go in terms of like the scale of the problem?
I think there's a couple things from my perspective to talk about. I'll go back to that fear topic. It's not so much taking the backup; it's the restoring of the data. How much effort is going to be taken into doing that? Regardless of the size of your company, you've got work to be doing towards what you need to be doing. You shouldn't be taking you shouldn't need to be spending your time restoring your data, right? And in some cases, it could be quite complex, right? If we're talking about all the metadata around GitHub, if you live completely 100% within your cloned repository, that's great, but you're probably a developer of one, and you understand the code base 100%.
Right.
As soon as you start introducing more employees or more contributors to your project, you're probably using pull requests, and the data starts to build. It may be small, pointing out bugs in pull requests, whatever. You may end up using the comment system as ways of sharing data and/or pulling out code rather than leaving it in the code base as comments and stuff. One of the benefits of GitHub, of using it to help keep track of the documentation for your software development, is GitHub as a repository is not a search tool. You can't easily go back and find old snippets of code that you may have pulled out, but you may want to keep. Right.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
For later, you can't easily go back and find those things. So right. This is why you have wikis, or you may in a PR comment save that data there. That's going to be a lot easier to find later on, right?
Yeah.
The data in those systems is also important when you're bringing new developers in who don't fully understand the code base, right? Someone may be thinking, oh, why did this particular change why did this change happen? Beyond the code commit comments, they can actually go back, look at the PR, and see if there's actually a thread discussing it.
Cool. Yeah. So we've actually had some questions come in, and we've got a couple around security. Mm-hmm. So, we've had one person that asked to kind of elaborate on the security. How does rewind keep the data secure? And I guess we can even talk about this together with GitHub. And then we've also had another question, about kind of the ransomware, protection against ransomware attacks. So can you kind of speak to the security around rewind and what we can do with GitGuardian to protect this? Well, so related to security on the Rewind platform, we went through an exercise this last year to become SOC 2 compliant ourselves. And so there's a lot of reporting and stuff around that. And in fact, a lot of it is from a developer standpoint, a little bit over my head. I do know that we actually have to have a lot more stringent access rights. We only allow people who need to have access to things. It's a very tightly controlled ship, right? We do not have direct access to be seeing customers' data, that sort of thing. For the data that's being held from GitHub, the backups, they are considered to be encrypted at rest and encrypted in transit. Right. We obviously have to open them up with the code in order to maintain functions, in order to deal with the operations on a daily basis, but it's secure otherwise. As for ransomware attacks, I'd say the best thing would be to have a backup that is offsite from GitHub. If they come in and compromise your account and delete everything off of GitHub, and like I said, leave you that README file with a Bitcoin wallet, the easiest way to fix that is to obviously resecure your account or create a brand new account, and then go to your Rewind backups
and reconnect the restore app and get all of your repositories back. It's pretty simple. If you needed to do that from manually, aside from losing all the metadata, because you'd probably only have the clones of the repos, and let's assume that you knew exactly which repos to be restoring because of who had the latest access and had the latest fetches from the master, you still then have to manually go ahead and create those repositories and push them back up.
Yeah. It makes perfect sense, and something that I'm an advocate for too is that from a security perspective, having backups is important for a number of reasons in terms of functionality, ransomware we've touched on, but I always like to operate, and it's not always possible, but can this project be open sourced without implementing an immediate security threat? Do you have secrets inside your repository? Are there misconfigurations? Are there things like encryption, vulnerabilities that are evident in your code? And we should be aiming to kind of get rid of those at the code base level, and then even though the backups are secure, that certainly sounds as secure, if not more secure, than having than accessing it through a GitHub account. But we take away that threat, and that's kind of, I guess, where GitGuardian and Rewind are coming together.
Exactly.
So just to look at some of the polls now. So around about 75% of people currently don't back up their GitHub repositories, aside from a clone, and we've got around about 25% that currently use backup scripts. So it's good to see that there are some people that are kind of making that extra step. But perhaps not quite at that maturity level yet. Yep. Thoughts on shared responsibility model? We had no votes to disagree. So everyone agrees that this is actually fair. But I do like the comments that were made in there about people actually not being aware that we're in a shared responsibility model. I don't think this is clear, and not necessarily something that GitHub and other large organizations want to kind of advertise, if you will. All right. So we have now a little bit of a demo on Rewind. So I'm just going to go back to sharing my screen. Here we are. So just skip past these. So we have just a 2-minute video demonstration of how Rewind works. And now's a good time to ask any other questions that you have that we have for James or for myself, and we'll answer those in a minute. So,
welcome to Backup, the easiest way to automate the data security of your GitHub repository. Here's how it works. First, you'll need to create and log into your Backup account. The login credentials use GitHub OAuth authentication and are limited to users with owner-level access within your organization. If you use Backup with several GitHub organizations, they'll be listed here. Now that you are logged in, you are taken into the vault. Here, you can see all the repositories you have backed up. If a repository is highlighted in yellow, it means the backup is in progress. If a repository is highlighted in green, it means the backup is complete. When clicking on an individual repository, you can see the repository ID, the last time it was backed up, and all the historical backups called snapshots that have been created of that repository. You can clone a repository, ensuring consistent access even if GitHub is down. You can download the files to take a quick look at a repository's backup. You can also download the repository's metadata to see pull requests and other issues. And last but not least, if a repository were to get erased or corrupted, you can restore it by clicking on the Restore button. You'll be asked to install a separate application. This separate app allows Backup to create a new repository in your GitHub account. Select the snapshot date that you want to restore the repository to. Click Restore. Give it a name. Click Restore. The Restore app creates a new repository and pushes the data into it. If you go into your GitHub account, you will now see the restored repository. Back to the main screen. In the upper right-hand corner, you will find a drop-down menu. Here, you can add an email address for notifications. you can configure access, which allows you to select which repositories you want to back up. Next, with the Cloud Sync feature, you can automatically connect and sync your backed up repositories to your AWS S3 bucket. Alternatively, you can clone the repository directly from BackHub's server by going into your settings and activating this option. Finally, you can see the audit log, which shows what's happening in your account, who is downloading data and when backups were created, and all other activity on your BackHub account. We hope that you enjoyed our quick tour of BackHub. If you have any questions, please reach out to our team by emailing us at sales@backhub.co or by using the chat.
All right. So we actually had a couple of questions about Rewind, so I think it was good timing to show the video there. But so the first one here is, can you restore your account if you lose access to can you restore a backup if you lose access to your GitHub account? So yeah, I'm assuming that if someone's come in, deleted your GitHub account through an attack, can you still restore your data with Rewind?
Yeah, so we have a method of determining the true account holder, even if you do not have access to the GitHub account that was utilized to create the backups. So It's a bit of a manual system, obviously, yeah, you'll have to reach out to support directly in order to get that done.
But possible. That's the important part.
Of course, yeah.
And do you guys have plans? We have here. Do you have a kind of a free service plan? Do you have free trials? What's the? How can people kind of get started?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. So we have signing up for our product will automatically start a free 2-week trial. We do not currently have a free plan for free software, but I'm going to make a note of that because that actually sounds like a really good idea. I know I've heard of a very similar topic around the table recently, so I'm going to add this as a potential option to that mix. So I can't say yes or no. Right now, we do not have a full free plan, but definitely there is a trial for you to test out the product today.
Excellent. Cool. Well, unless there's any other questions, we'll give it. Oh, we have one more. Just as I see, there's always one more. Let me see. Is it backup GitHub tokens and data rights and application rights access? So does it back up your GitHub tokens and yeah?
No, it does not. We actually do. We stay away from the access tokens, and a lot of the higher end configuration. Mainly that's to protect. We do not want to back up some of that stuff so that we're not seen as a vector of compromise, essentially.
Got it. Now keep those secrets out of reduce secret sprawl. No secrets. Exactly. Yeah. Well, James, look, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us, share us a little bit about Rewind. It's certainly interesting, and one of the reasons why I really wanted to kind of have this topic was because GitHub has expanded. We're very integrated into it, but it's more than just source code now, and it's good to know that the shared responsibility model, it does exist with GitHub, and there's a lot more than just source code that we need to worry about. So thank you so much for sharing your time. And I have one other announcement before I forget, and the marketing team gets mad at me. We have... I haven't mentioned the winner of the swag bag either. I have two things. Okay. But we'll start the next webinar. Now, the next webinar is an exciting one because each year we release our State of Secret Sprawl. We monitor every single public commit made in GitHub. So it's well over a billion commits that we scan every year for secrets. And each year we release our findings about the most common types of secrets, how many secrets we've found, where we've found them, what countries they've come from. And next webinar, February the 23rd, which is a Wednesday, we will be discussing this report. Now, the webinar is available on Crowdcast, so you can sign up for that today. I've been slack. I haven't made a fancy banner for it, but I promised I will as soon as I finish this. But that's here. So really, it's going to be an exciting one. We're going to have some of the team here at GitGuardian to help us. All right, now on to the important stuff. Who is the winner of the swag bag? So I'm just crunching the numbers down here. It's going to spit me out a name. Martin Julia. So Martin, congratulations. I'll email you about the swag bag and a postal address to do it and send it to as well. So thanks for participating so much. Thanks everyone. I hope to see you at the next webinar, and thanks again, James. And I look forward to seeing you all again next time.
Thank you very much.